It was in the late 90s that I first began to think of what I would like to write about next, or who I would like to write about next. And Moss Hart seemed to be a perfect candidate for me. I admired him greatly. The more I read about him, the more I admired him. And that's exactly what happened. 5 or 6 years later, people became interested in looking at another biography of Moss Hart, and so mine was done. It was very difficult for me to choose what section to read. In fact, I almost chose this section at random. It's on My Fair Lady, because I think everybody is very familiar with The Man Who Came to Dinner and You Can't Take It With You, his outstanding plays. And although that would have been interesting for people to hear, I wonder if people remember that he was the person who got My Fair Lady into such brilliant shape. The first night audience, which had heard so much about My Fair Lady's out-of-town success, behaved quietly and reverentially, applauding after every song, but withholding its laughter. Alan J. Lerner, the composer, said, "At the end of the first scene, Moss rushed over to us, and it was the first and only time I ever saw him frantic. I knew it," he said. "It's just a New Haven hit. That's all, just a New Haven hit." Fritz Lowe, the composer, looked at him with an amused but sympathetic smile on his face. "My darling Mossy," he said, "if you don't know this is the biggest hit that has ever come to New York, you had better come with me and get a drink." And he led Moss from the theater to the nearest bar. Somebody who is unfamiliar with Moss Hart and who reads the book will be impressed by his gallantry, really. He was a depressive. He spent his entire life dealing with depression and tried to commit suicide on a couple of occasions. Pandemonium is not unusual backstage after an opening night, but the uproar at the premiere of My Fair Lady bordered on hysteria. The reviews could not have been more enthusiastic. Brooks Atkinson, nearing the end of his tenure as a drama critic for the Times, began his notice, "Bulletins from the road have not been misleading. My Fair Lady, which opened at the Mark Hellinger last evening, is a wonderful show." Atkinson had nothing but praise for the authors, the design team, the performers, and for, quote, "Moss Hart, who has staged it with taste and skill," unquote. In 2004, there was a centennial celebration of Moss Hart's birth held at Lincoln Center, in which he was eulogized and paid tribute to, as well as his wife, Kitty Carlisle Hart, who was a significant help to me, by the way, in the writing of this book. And it's the only time she's ever cooperated with another writer in terms of someone writing her husband's biography. She gave me permission also to see his diary, which no one had ever seen before. One of the most enthusiastic letters came from Hume Cronin, who said, "I didn't just enjoy it. I got the kind of kick out of it that you only get very occasionally through years of theater going. The whole thing, Moss, was so incredibly beautiful, so gay, tender, and easy. All the things which are the most difficult to bring into the theater." Julie Andrews, about whose performance so many had been concerned in the early days of rehearsal, was said by Atkinson to have done a magnificent job. The transformation from street corner drab to lady is both touching and beautiful. Julie Andrews, at first, she was only 19 at the time, almost was let go from the company because she didn't have much acting experience, and it showed. But through her intense work with Moss Hart, she wound up giving a brilliant performance. My Fair Lady has often been called the greatest musical of all time. And I think it's not only because it's brilliantly written by Lerner and Lowe, but it's also because it was brilliantly directed by Moss Hart. And many of the succeeding productions were based on the model that Moss Hart set. No wonder he took such immense pride in his contribution to My Fair Lady. With that musical, Moss Hart had once again achieved a success so monumental that few Broadway artists have ever approached it.